right, my friends, welcome back. This is going to be part 7 of my presentation on the flood and Noah's Ark. Um, on my last video, I introduced you to a gentleman by the name of Immanuel Velikovsky. If you'll notice on the screen, I, excuse me, I inadvertently skipped over a book that he had wrote. Now, I said in the video, when I was editing the video, I saw where I said these are books that he read. And so I don't know if anybody else caught that, but no, these are books that he wrote. But at any rate, if you'll notice, it would be the book it'd be the book that's showing in front of Mankind in Amnesia, which would be the second book from the right. Second book from the right. I inadvertently skipped over, I didn't add that to this information here, but if you look right above it, you'll see some small letters. Those are the names of the book. Well, that one is called Oedipus or Oedipus. It's Oedipus. Oedipus, and Akhenaton, Akhnaton, Myth and History. And so he wrote that one also. And so, like I said, I just want to make sure I give him all the respect this gentleman rightly deserves. And so, but he wrote that book there. Now, going back to Earth in Upheaval, he going to chapter 14 entitled Extinction, which is now where this information I'm giving you is on pages 202 and 203 of this book. And I just took a scan of this page here, but you'll notice what he says here. When a fish dies, its body floats on the surface or sinks to the bottom and is devoured rather quickly, actually a matter of hours, by other fish. However, the fossil fish found in sedimentary rock. Now, sedimentary rock, guys, is rock that has been laid down by water. You get sedimentary rock by water. Now, this is, when you think of sedimentary, think of sediments, things, different layers of strata. That's what you think of when you think of sedimentary rock. It goes on, is very often preserved with all its bones intact. Entire shoals of fish over large areas numbering billions of specimens are found in a state of agony, but with no mark of a scavenger's attack. The explanation of the origin of fossils by the theory of uniformity and evolution contradicts the fundamental principle of these theories. Now remember, when Immanuel Velikovsky was writing his stuff, he was given more evidence to support catastrophism. Now, if you guys remember way back in the previous videos, and even those that remember my dinosaur and man videos presentation, you heard me speak about uniformitarianism versus catastrophism, and how uniformitarianism was the evolutionist. That's your secular thinkers. The catastrophists was the mark of the Bible believers. The Bible believers, for the most part, was called catastrophists. There's two schools of thought there. And so that's what we're talking about here. Now, when he was writing his books, he was going against that theory of uniformitarianism. That's that uniformity that they're talking about there. He was contradicting it, and he was absolutely ostracized, guys. People couldn't stand him. And so the secular thinkers of that day, and so of his time there, and even today, I'm sure there's people that can't stand him, but he was giving more evidence for the Bible believers, even though that he wasn't trying to. He was just showing this is the evidence. And so, but at any rate, it goes on to say, nothing took place in the past that does not take place in the present. Today, no fossils are formed. Now, going on to that next red block there that I got there, the size of continental areas covered by floods imply catastrophic events. Now, we talked about that word catastrophic at the very beginning of this presentation when I was going through the definitions. Catastrophic events on a large scale, and such events far beyond what is observed on seasonally overflowing rivers today. Again, contradicts the principle of uniformity. So he was giving more evidence for catastrophism, which that was the thought of the Bible believers. And a lot of scientists before Hutton and Lyell, they believed in catastrophism. They believed in it. Now, if you'll notice, there's 28 fossil fish on this slate here. Now, this is mine. I have this here. I usually will take this to presentations, and so it's right now it's tucked away in the presentation model of the ark, and so I'm not going to go digging it out right now. But you're going to get a better view by what you're seeing here. But this right here, by what I've been able to find here, by count, there's 28 fossil fish, guys. 28 fossil fish. And when you turn it on its side, you can see tiny little layers, and you can flake off. If you look real closely on the bottom left hand of this picture here, you can see where if I was to flake off, there's probably dozens and dozens of more fossil fish in there. Now, if you look real closely at these fish, guys, these fish have not been scavenged. They were buried catastrophically. All of a sudden, they died immediately. They were immediately buried, and then they fossilized. Now look at their bones. These are tiny little details. The gills, the eyes, the backbone, the ribs, everything is there. The fins, it's all there. And they all died all at one time. Fish gills begin to deteriorate in 4 to 5 hours after the fish dies. They won't last. They won't last long when a fish dies if something doesn't eat it first. And here, how about this one? Here's a fish eating another fish, and they both were buried immediately. And everything is there. The bones, everything is all there. It's all there. Everything has been, the details and everything has been preserved, and that fish has fossilized. Here's one of an ichthyosaur giving birth. The remains of 3 young still lie in the body cavity. Now, I have this book here it's Prehistoric Sea Monsters. Now, we talked about that word prehistoric, how there's no such thing as prehistoric. There's nowhere in the biblical timeline, I should say, in the biblical worldview, that you can go back to prehistory, before history was. There's no such thing. Whenever God said, and God created the world, there's your start right there. There's no prehistory. And so these animals were created. So again, the book is called Prehistoric Sea Monsters. I actually got it from a thrift store. But again, check this out, an amazing fossil, guys. But now what they believe here, let me show you another picture. If you look at it, it says the front of the skull is still in the outlet of the pelvis. And so you can see that. Now there's there's 2 different thoughts here. One thought is that the ichthyosaur was giving birth, and then all of a sudden it was buried. And so now who knows, maybe because of the catastrophe or whatever, the stress, it caused the ichthyosaur maybe to go in birth, to go in labor earlier than it should have. And it was given birth while the catastrophe was going on, and because of the stress and stuff like that. Or some people believe that, or there's another thought, that because of the weight of the material on top of the ichthyosaur, it squeezed out one of them. That's just the 2 thoughts. I just thought I would throw that out at you, and you guys can think of what you want. Even though with that being stated, it's still an amazing fossil here that you can show happened immediately. This ichthyosaur didn't die and float around and then float down to the bottom, and then over time material landed on it and then it fossilized. No, it ain't going to happen. Now, Immanuel Velikovsky goes on to say, notice the underlined letters, the underlined words, cataclysmic events in the past. We're talking catastrophic. We're talking worldwide here. He goes on, Land animals were engulfed and buried by enormous tides, carrying debris in many places. Avalanches of sand and volcanic dust entombed aquatic life. Fish skeletons remaining in poses of death, undevoured and undecayed. Now, if you'll notice here, this is a picture of two fish. One is inside the pterosaur, and there's a pterosaur. So you've got an aquatic animal with a non-aquatic animal fossilized together. What's up with that? Now, here's your pterosaur here. If you look up at the top left-hand corner, there you go, right there. And so that's what you're seeing in that one fossil. Now, if you'll notice here, another one, land animal and fish. There you go, fossilized together. What's up with that? Here's another one, land animal and fish together. Now, there's a dinosaur with a fish. Now, when you talk about now, if you going back to what Immanuel Velikovsky was saying, poses of death. If you'll notice that at the bottom, he said fish skeletons remaining in poses of death. Now, I want you to zero in on the poses of death. There is something that is called the death pose. The death pose. Now, this right here is some pictures of that. If you'll notice, the head is thrown back. The head is thrown back, and now there's a thought on what exactly is going on here, and then I'm going to tell you of another experiment that was done. But if you'll notice, the animals' heads are thrown back. Even the fish at the bottom, the head is thrown back. All these right here, the head is bowed back, is arched back. Here's a death pose here, again thrown back. And so what is believed is to be happening is that these animals are gasping for air, and they're throwing their it's just something that the animal does, gasping for air. Their necks are thrown back. Here's another one here, death pose. Death pose. Now, what's interesting about this animal is that there's the remains of birds in its stomach, and so but there you go. There's a death pose here. It's thrown back. It's thrown back. Now, in 2011, a group of researchers took 7 freshly killed chickens and threw them into fresh, cold water. Within seconds, the necks of these dead chickens all arched or recurved backwards, taking on the posture familiar to the death pose. Chickens were used because they have a relatively long neck in common with many of the dinosaurs that take on this pose. Chickens have a strong ligament, and that's right there, ligamentum elasticum, that aids the neck muscles that hold their head up. This experiment was repeating using an emu, and the same phenomenon was observed again. However, when the ligament was severed, whenever they cut that, the head no longer bent backwards. One of the researchers admitted, although the roads to the that death pose, let's just call it the death pose, although the roads to the death pose are many, immersion in water is the simplest explanation. So what they're saying is these animals, on the death pose, they died in water. They died in water, and many of the fossils that you will see will look like these animals were swimming, were trying to swim. And so it's an amazing thing, guys, when they research this stuff, how the research can actually collaborate the fact that these animals died in water, and that would actually correlate with a biblical flood, especially in the catastrophic ways that some of these fossil graveyards, and we're going to look at fossil graveyards later, what they're able to see. I mean, huge amounts of animals, plants, aquatic life, all mixed up together in a gigantic, showing literally millions of bones and skeletons and fossils all together, showing something huge on a large scale, catastrophic, buried these animals. And so let's go ahead and stop right there. When we come back, we continue on with some other fascinating things. I hope you guys are enjoying it. I hope the Lord blesses you real good, and y'all have a super day. Bye-bye.